Is that it? We're alive? All right.
It's a good thing. It's a good thing we're doing a technology podcast.
Yeah, good thing we've rehearsed this and polished it. So welcome to the Education Tech Review. This is a new project from Rob Steller and myself, Josiah Hills. You may know us. There's a very small chance that you know us from another podcast called the Education Technology Conversations, or ETC. That was a project that we did about a year ago. We started about a year ago when we were working together at the same company. Since then, Rob left the company. I'll let him fill you in on what he's been doing. And even though my boss says I can still do the podcast, I don't really have time to do the podcast while at work. So I figured if I'm going to do it on my own time and Rob was game, we'd kind of do a relaunch. And so we're calling the podcast and this project as a whole the Education Tech Review. We're going to be, as you might guess from the name, looking at education technology and talking about trends as far as software, hardware goes, and maybe innovative uses of technology in the education arena. So if you're familiar with education, ETC, education education
EdTech conversations. Come on,
conversations. Thank you. If you're familiar with that former podcast, you may realize that we had these segments that we used to do, and it was kind of a highly produced show, unlike this one, as you can tell. As much fun as that was to do, and as much positive feedback as we got, it just was a lot of time to go back and edit and do retakes and splice in music. So we're going to do a little more rough and raw here, but hopefully that allows us to get you a lot more content. We're going to take some of the segments we used to do in ETC and in one show and kind of break them out as to miniature segments. So something like we might do a quick podcast on EdTech news. We might do a segment called like What's on Our Minds, where we take a deeper look at education trends or education news, and that's what we'll be doing today. We're going to be talking about my recent trip to the ISTE 2014 conference. We also have a couple other segments in mind, and we'll be planning those and unrolling them as the time comes. So, Rob, fill us in real quickly on what you've been up to since you left our former place of employment.
Yeah, thank you so much. Glad to be back podcasting with you. Got the duo back together. The fans wanted it. We're bringing it to the people.
Yeah, sure.
So since leaving the last position I had, I started my own education software company, and right now we're working on a piece of software to basically help teachers with skill tracking and also integrate some video game mechanics for the students to use, and that they can track their own skills as they progress, especially towards related to Common Core state standards. But that's for another podcast we can talk about.
Okay. Yeah, we'll definitely visit that concept, give you a little opportunity to promote your new business, and just really have good conversations about what's going on and what can maybe help students learn. So let's get started in the main topic for today, which is ISTE.
Yes.
I went to ISTE 2014 in Atlanta.
And you left me here in muggy Connecticut.
Oh, it's plenty hot down in Atlanta.
I believe it. So this was your first official trip to an ISTE conference, right? So what were your initial impressions of going to this conference? It's massive, right? I mean, it's a huge conference.
Yeah, I heard a couple numbers floating around, anywhere from 15 to 20,000 attendees.
Wow, that's crazy.
And it was at the World Conference Center in Atlanta, and it was a very, very large gathering of people. Yeah, and just based on those numbers, you might guess it's going to sound cliche, but it was overwhelming, really, to get to that location, and it was a 4-day-long conference on top of that. So it's a really long conference, a lot of people, obviously a lot of different sessions going on, and many different types of sessions. So there were poster presentations, there were what they called birds of a feather, there were old-fashioned or traditional lectures, there were workshops, there were all kinds of, there were probably in total maybe 8 to 10 different types of presentations and workshops that you could go to. And so it took a while for me to kind of digest that and figure out what were the types of things that were going to be useful to me. Just to compare and contrast, a couple days before ISTE, I was actually in Denver for a different conference, and that was that conference was just on Schoology, which is a learning management system that we use at my place of employment. And so, obviously, as you might guess, the Schoology conference was highly focused for me, and I was able to just jump right in and figure out what did I want to learn and what did I want to get from that conference. ISTE was it was basically the exact opposite of that. I really had to let things sink in and start to build my own path of what I wanted to learn and experience while I was there, just because I was not prepared in the first day.
So yeah, I mean, so you had to go. I mean, there's tons of vendors there, right? And then there's also numerous amounts of sessions that you can go to every single day. So I mean, you got a little bit of both, right? You got a taste of both worlds. So what were some of the standout sessions that you attended?
You know, it was tricky. Like I said, it took me a while to figure out how to just plan my day out. So I only went to a couple sessions each day. And part of that was there were maybe a couple hundred, I want to say at least 100 sessions every day. And just to navigate that and kind of search and sort. They had an app that was decent. There were some bugs in it people had complained about, and maybe the user interface was a little clunky in some areas. So it was just tricky to quickly find what I was looking for and what was interesting to me. And so the very first day I was there, I ended up doing a volunteer session. I was basically helping people at the IT desk, and that actually was one of the best things I attended, because I just got to meet other people who were volunteering.
Sure.
And then obviously tons of people came to the help desk, and I ended up meeting a guy that first day, and we reconnected and had lunch a couple days later, and we made plans to keep in touch and do some collaboration as the year goes on. So wasn't exactly what I planned or anticipated, but really that volunteering session, I think, was the best thing that happened at that conference. Not to take away from any of the other presenters, but so my role in my job right now is to present education technology topics and consult with districts, etc. And so because of that, I feel like I do a lot of research, and my colleagues at work keep me informed as to what are the current trends. And so ISTE, the presentations that I got to attend at ISTE were less groundbreaking than I would have liked for someone who's in as deep as I am in ed tech. But
can you give us like a flavor of what some of the sessions you went to were?
Sure. So there was some, like one of the ones I went to was called Computational Thinking, and it was really about teaching kids to code. And the person did a great presentation, but it wasn't really anything new to me. So
Sure,
it was, here's Scratch from MIT Labs, and this is how you can use it at different grade levels. And if you want to go a little bit lower, you might use something like Hopscotch or Daisy the Dinosaur on an iPad. Or if you want to go a little bit higher, you might use Alice, or just use Code Academy to jump right into things like Java and JavaScript or other object-oriented programming languages, which is all great stuff. It's really good resources, but it was nothing really new to myself. So like I said, I'm not trying to detract from the conference, but for people who are really steeped in ed tech, I think the biggest benefits come from the networking opportunities that I had.
What were some of the like overall trends that you saw throughout the conference? I mean, were there certain platforms that kept coming up in a lot of different sessions that you went to, or people were talking about?
Yeah, just looking at some of the sessions, not necessarily things that I got to attend, but just some of the sessions in the program, you see a lot of good stuff, talking about using learning management systems, which, anybody familiar with ETC knows that you and I are big proponents of that, because it helps organize the learning in a digital space. So had a couple different competing learning management systems being presented, and I love that, because the competition encourages and increases the feature sets of all the platforms. There was a lot of stuff about flipped learning, a lot of stuff about use of Twitter and other social networks, some stuff, like I said, about coding, that sort of thing, and a lot of stuff about Google and Chromebooks and even Google Classroom, which is a newly announced service slash platform that they announced a couple months back.
Interesting.
So, yeah, good stuff.
What about the vendors? I know you got to a lot of different vendors, right? You said you made your way around the floor quite a bit, and
yeah, I've got this.
A lot of them.
Yeah, I've got this Fitbit, and that keeps track of my steps. And one day I decided to. There wasn't a clear-cut winner as far as a session or workshop that I wanted to attend, so I said, you know what? I'm just going to go through all these vendors, and I snaked up and down all the columns that they had. And that day, I think I had almost 20,000 steps, which is about, I think, 8 miles or something like that, 6 to 8 miles or something. Anyhow, lots and lots of vendors, some really, really cool stuff, and some stuff like, I'm not really sure why they were there,
Yeah.
You had some guys or some companies trying to pass off games and toys as learning tools, which I think they have their place, but I think they were definitely trying to oversell, or at least their sales reps couldn't communicate the real learning value in some of those products. There was a guy selling Wi-Fi clocks. They were literally analog clocks that you'd put on the wall that had a Wi-Fi router kind of like soldered onto the back, and you could set the time and the bell schedule from a central server, which it's kind of bizarre, but it's actually kind of genius as well. Because I remember, when I was in the classroom, so many times the power would go out and you'd have to reset the clocks, and the clocks would be off by a couple hours. Just tiny little things that you don't really think about in the real world that make a big deal in school buildings, because they're such a microcosm of their own community. So, that's not what I went to ISTE for, to see Wi-Fi clocks, but they were there. I saw some really cool stuff. One of the things I got most excited about was Little Bits, which is a magnet snapping. It's got these little bits that snap together based on magnets, and they've got different types of circuitry, motors, and stuff like that. So you can build machines, and they have an Arduino chip that you can program and do stuff really fast, really cool stuff, but really complicated stuff. And it's kind of right up the trend of engineering, at the younger grade levels. And so that was one of the coolest, funnest things I got to see. I did get to play with the Surface Pro 3, which
nice.
I know you're using right now to broadcast the show. And yeah, so that was interesting. That was fun, and lots of hardware. I did get to play with Google Classroom, and I kind of went on a little rant. I apologize afterwards, but I kind of ranted and raved at one of the programmers, and this kid was probably like 23, 24, fresh out of college. And my issue with that, and I'm actually going to write a blog post about this and go into it in more detail, but my issue is that it's really a distractor, because people know Google, and so they hear, oh, Google Classroom, this must be really cool. But when you look at the features, it's way, way behind compared to things like Schoology, things like Moodle, things like Edmodo, things like Canvas, and all four of those that I just named are better and free. So people are like, oh, Google, and it's free. I'm like, well, there are these 4 other things that are better and free, but they don't have the awareness or the marketing power behind themselves like Google does. So, it's kind of disruptive to the ed tech.
The moral of this is don't make Josiah angry at a presentation, because he will go off on you.
I did apologize. It was not.
So all right. So you talked about a few things that you didn't think would be useful. Were there any any vendors that you saw that you would immediately go back now to your job and say, oh, this is something we should look more at? I mean, is there anything that really stood out to you?
Yeah, actually, I went with a colleague, and just this week, this first full week of being back, we we sat down together and made a spreadsheet of all the stuff that we want to share with other people in our school system. So the director of STEM, the director of ELA, um, and then also in the consulting business that we're in, we need to be aware of other products and be able to talk intelligently about those two other districts. So, so like I said, the coolest thing for me was probably the little bits,
Hmm.
which I wasn't anticipating hardware um, to have a big presence at ISTE
Yep.
and to kind of steal the show for me personally. But the little bits was really cool. I got to test out some, like I said, we use Schoology, but I did get to test out some other learning management systems. Canvas was pretty good, and I did attend a session on how to use Canvas and how other schools are using it. And it's got a lot of similarities to Schoology. It takes a slightly different tack with their user interface, and they have close to the same features, and a couple things better there, and a couple things not as good as Schoology. But that was really cool to kind of have it just time to sit down and go through it and look at what
Were there any mobile or tablet apps that teachers could go and download and try out right away that you saw that would be really useful?
um, what's the one from Connecticut that the classroom?
My
What is it?
Skillboard.
We'll talk about that one some other time. But I on the startups, mm, I can't remember. But
Hmm.
I can explain the feature set, which was it basically allowed students or a teacher to very quickly push out editable worksheets effectively, right?
Hmm.
So worksheets kind of detracts from what you could really do. But so I could take a PDF or Word document on my iPad, push it out to other kids by giving them a group code, and then they could annotate it using a stylus or just their finger on their iPad, and then push it right back to me. So I would still like to see that work in a learning management system so it can be
Sure. Yeah.
organized and accounted for, but just that quick back and forth was really cool. And so even if it can't fit into a learning management system, maybe to use it for formative assessment would be really cool. I'll have to find the name and put that in the show notes.
Sure.
For whatever reason, I can't remember it right now.
So what were the other? I mean, were there any other major takeaways? I know you mentioned networking was probably the most useful piece of this for you.
Yeah, that's I think it. For me, networking was the biggest thing because again, the place where I work, really all I got to do is call somebody, and I'll have a vendor demonstration either over the online or in person, depending on how close they are to where we work. But because we work with several school districts, they're always knocking on our door and sending me all kinds of wonderful email. So that's as cool as it was to see all those vendors in one place and maybe some new names and new companies. Um, the biggest thing was really making connections to other educators around the country and seeing what they're doing, seeing how some of the organizations that are comparable to where I work in other states do things and how they go about making ed tech a bigger, more impactful force in their school systems. That was really cool. And I've got several names that I need to follow up with and just periodically check in throughout the year to take pulse and see what they're up to.
Nice. So what are some ways that they can improve ISD for next year? Because I know you said the mobile app that you used didn't really work out. I know yesterday you were telling me you wanted to attend one session, they ended up moving it or rescheduling it, or changing the room, then you couldn't find it
Yeah,
afterwards.
yeah. So they had this really cool idea, is all I can say, because I didn't get to attend it. Um, which was they had I think 20 or so startups, education technology startups, and they had them all in the same area, kind of in the middle of the vendor expo, and then they also had a stage set up where they would go through. and they had opportunity to present, and then they'd go through a round of voting, and then the next day the winners would present again, and then another round of voting. So it's kind of like Survivor, right? And the last day, a couple people were supposed from that startup expo were supposed to talk about an accelerator camp that they went through in the Boston area for EdTech investment. And that was scheduled, like I said, for the last day, and that was according to the app and according to the paper program. And apparently it was rescheduled. So that was a huge letdown, and just as a twist of fate, I actually was staying in the same hotel as the two ladies who were supposed to present that session that I missed. So I did get kind of my own private mini session and got to ask them a lot of one-on-one questions, but that was just the luck of the draw. So things that could be improved, the app, I think it was very ambitious, and it did get a lot of things right, but always room for improvement there. One other thing that was really bizarre was the opening keynote speaker was Ashley Judd, and the line was literally through the door on the other side of the building. I mean, there was a line probably 3 football fields long.
Sure.
To get into that, 2 hours before it started. And so people were interested in seeing Ashley Judd because it was Ashley Judd, but when you stop and think about ISTE, meaning the International Society of Technology Education, I don't know what Ashley Judd has to do with that. And people, after they left, they said, I don't know what Ashley Judd was doing here. So that was a little bizarre.
Yeah.
Nothing against Ashley Judd, but it's just the wrong audience for her. So that was a little weird. Overall, I would say it's a good experience, but maybe not an every year thing, or maybe not even a 4-day thing. If you could get a hold of the schedule early, I'm not sure ISTE is interested in making this available early, but if I could have gotten a hold of the schedule early, I might have just shown up for 1 or 2 days.
Yeah.
Instead of the full 4. But overall, it was good. I just can't say, based on the cost, that it's something I would want to do every year, or other people in my department should do every year.
Sure. Well, I missed out, man. I got to go next year. That's it.
Yeah, next year's in Philadelphia, so that's a little bit closer to us. Maybe we could drive down there for a day or two. Definitely, you should check out the Vendor Expo. It's crazy.
Maybe we'll have to do some video content from there. Start doing interviews.
Yeah, that would be fun.
There you go.
That would be fun.
All right.
We
got a lot in the pipeline coming down.
Yeah, and this is good. I'm glad you're able to do this and made yourself available. So we'll keep doing this, and bigger and better things to come. And the main thing, like I said earlier, is more regular content. We're going to try to put out something every week, whether it's a video or a blog post, a written blog post, or something like that. And just have more regular content for people who are interested.
There it is.
All right. Thanks again.
All right.